Someone sent me a T-shirt image a few days ago, which actually now works very well because of what the T-shirt says. It says, "Pastor warning, what you say or do may wind up in a sermon." And so it did. And I thank my brother Franklin for illuminating me with that. Blessings to you, sir. It doesn't look like much as far as documentation goes, words written down on a piece of paper. Psalm 24 is not that long. Until you start digging into it, it's like you turn over this top layer, and here's this next thing, and then here's this next thing, and then it goes over here, and it goes over there, and it goes over here. But we put a brand new battery in the watch clock back there because somebody said, if that's not working, we could be here all day. I said, no, I did not warn anybody about bringing a bag lunch, so I'm going to have to keep it short and sweet and to the point. This has a lot of history to it, and quite honestly, just to make sure that I got everybody kind of in that mode, you'll notice that the usual sermon notes don't look exactly like they've done for the last 20 weeks because we were dealing with specific statements of the questions that we just finished. Now, we're behind that now, so I understand that those 20 questions are now embedded in your thinking processes, and we're all walking on several levels higher in our spirituality, which would be great. But anyway, since we've been through those, and I've actually been asked a couple of times if we could get all the connection letters together and post them in a place somewhere, so in case somebody wants to go back and get some refresher on a week maybe they missed or whatever, I'm going to start trying to put that together so that you can have that at your leisure. And in the meantime, if something does hit you that you need, I can get them up pretty quick for you. Warren Wiersbe is a commentarist for the Bible. I find him, he's very conservative, and he's very thoughtful. But what I really like about Wiersbe is he always gets to the so what part of the statement. He always attaches what should be happening in you as you look at this particular passage of Scripture, whatever it is. And if I were a person that was going to have you think about assembling a small library of books, which if you're a studier of the Word, you probably should have, a good commentary is his Bible expository commentary, which is only 2 volumes. And he does the entire Bible in these 2 volumes, and they're maybe about that thick or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they're not gigantic books that weigh you down, but they're just incredibly practical. And this is one of the reasons why I like Wiersbe, because he takes the theology and moves it to practical theology. So he answers the question, so what do I do with this? So in his history of this particular psalm, we discover that this was probably what was referred to as an antiphonal psalm. It meant that, anybody here grow up in a high church environment, like everything was pomp and circumstance and that kind of thing? Lot of stuff going on there. High church environment. No one. Somebody got one hand. Okay, here's 2. Who'll make it 3? Okay, so it sounds like I'm at an auction. Okay, if you've been in high church, you may have noticed how the front of the church is actually set up. There may be a lectionary where there's a smaller pulpit to one side and then the bigger pulpit's on the other side. The readings are done on one side. And is anybody now kind of seeing, you've been in a church where you've seen something like that? Okay, so when the pastor comes to preach, he's on the bigger one. He's on the larger one. And above it, there's this big soundboard, because if you go back and look at some of the cathedrals, you could be looking at a ceiling that's 90 feet tall. So if you speak out into this thing, it's just hundreds of thousands of square feet. And it's like your voice goes out. It's like speaking into a cotton ball. And there's no PA system. It's just going to have to carry. So this large structure was suspended above the pulpit area to catch that sound as it was going up and aim it forward. Also, the tradition said that if he spoke a lie, it would fall down and take him out. So I guess you had to be careful about that. But anyway, behind that, you may notice the choir. And most of the time when we go into a place where there's a formal choir setting, it's in rows like this. Well, that's not how they were originally set up. They would be set up, one part of the choir was on this side and part was on this side, and you sung across to each other. And the reason why you would do that is you could do echoes back and forth. And this is the concept of an antiphonal choir. So one side would sing a part, the next side would sing another part. Well, this actually has three sort of antiphonies inside of it. A word. Okay, there's three of these times when it happens in this psalm where there are actual statements that are made, and then there's like a question, and the other group would speak this. Okay, and so there was lots of power in that. I mean, you know that you've probably been to a concert where somebody on stage goes, they sing a line, and then they get quiet, and everybody sings it back to them, and that's just saying, okay, great, if you haven't bought my album yet, you need to buy it. Because then you know all these words that everybody seems to know around you. But, it's that reinforcement. We say something and somebody says it back. And it gets it in their mind what it is and really gets them to think about what it is, what's going on. So this psalm would be sung like that. And it's an interesting thing to consider the fact that during the reign of Herod, who would be there when Jesus was going to stand before Pilate, this was sung every week in the temple. It would have been being sung sometime during the morning when Jesus rode in on Palm Sunday. So think about that, because that figures prominently into the second thing here that we want to talk about. So let's begin the psalm, explore it, and kind of get this. And when I get to that place where this is an antiphonal part, now I haven't lost you. You're going, oh, what? Okay, so here we go. We're looking at Psalm 24, and it says, "The earth is the Lord's, and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers." This first part would be read all together. Everybody would speak this part. And it's actually the first break if you're looking at this section. So any notes that you might be thinking about from this section 1 and 2. This calls us to enjoy the goodness of all God's creation and our place as stewards in it. Now, I'm studying this thing through, and my brain jumps all over the place, as my wife will tell you. And so I'm thinking about this, and I find myself probably in mid-1985 when there is an author who is an astrophysicist and a philosopher of how life is supposed to be. And of course, his whole line of thinking is very, very evolutionary, very, very human-centered. And his name was Carl Sagan. And Sagan was, if you've been around for a little while, you probably remember him. He had a series that was called Cosmos that ran on television. They actually redid it with a more up-to-date astrophysicist, and his name has just left me, deGrasse, I think, yeah. And so he did it again, but there was an image. He wrote a book called Pale Blue Dot. And in this book, he talks about a very specific photograph that was taken from outer space, deep space. The Voyager spacecrafts 1 and 2 were launched in the mid-'70s, and their goal was to orbit some of the outer planets, and then they were going to go off into deep space, where no man has gone before, okay? And as they were leaving, this is mid-1970s technology, so by today's standards, this is like stone knives and bearskin kind of stuff in computer technology. But it had the highest quality lenses and cameras on it that were being built at that time. No expense was spared to get these two things in space. So they send a command to the Voyager spacecrafts, and they turn around and take an image of home from 4 billion miles in space. Now you're thinking, I can't wrap my head around 4 billion miles. The sun is 93 million miles away, and we could kind of get that because it glows every day. It better, as soon as it quits, we're in trouble. It takes, traveling at the speed of light, about 8 1/4 minutes to travel this distance, traveling at 186,000 miles in a second. To travel 4 billion miles at the speed of light will take just shy of 6 hours. Now we're traveling at an absolutely astronomical speed. But 6 hours for that image to be snapped and for it to be sent back to earth so it could be gotten. And here, this is this tiny little dot on like just 2 or 3 pixels of this image. And there's one beam of sunlight that's happening to come across it that's lighting it up. And that little dot is the earth from 4 billion miles away. Sagan grabbed a hold of this thing and said, see, look at how small we are. At 4 billion miles, we're this insignificant little dot in space. What all the posturing that we think that we're so big and we're so brash and we're so powerful, it's nothing. It just pales in the fact that here is this incredible galaxy, which is inside of a universe, which is just beyond anything that we can imagine. And we feel like we're some sort of special thing. And we are. Because he's got the entire thing, he's looking at it completely wrong. It is on this little so-called pale blue dot that is part of God's total creation. And on this stage, on this planet, God tells the greatest story that has ever been told. He creates it specifically for what he's going to do with it. He creates a being, a creature that is made in his image, and bestows upon him stewardship of everything that's around him. Just gives it to him. Here, use it. It's all here for you. It is here where when man fails and falls into sin, that God does not turn him into a burned out cinder. He comes down and meets him face to face. It is where God begins this incredible story of redemption for his people. That'd be us. Ain't got no smiles on their faces yet. Come on. He did this. This story then ultimately brings his son to this place where he walks, teaches, trains, lives, suffers, bleeds, dies, is raised again from the dead, ascends into heaven, and there he will come again. And I don't have any more smiles than that. Come on. This psalm actually talks about these things, these places. But the very first place, the very first world we'll talk about here are in these 2 verses. The earth is the Lord's. It's his. And all that is in it. All that is in it. And he declares that he has founded it upon the seas and established it on the waters. Well, if you go back and you look at the Genesis account, the earth is covered with water, which is a really tricky thing if you consider the fact that water freezes at a fairly, not a very, very cold temperature. You can get a lot colder, and outer space is a lot colder, but it's existing as it is made with liquid water sitting on top of it. And then the waters will be separated, and they will be gathered in a place, and dry land will appear, which is where we get to live, along with a whole bunch of other cool stuff. He sets the boundaries for these things. And although, we just had a supermoon and some houses fell in down at Rodantha. Okay, don't build that close to the ocean. It's a dynamic environment. Come on, wake up. It moves. But as far as it's sweeping in and taking the entire place, no. These lands are established. The mountains were raised. The valleys were made low. Things were shaped exactly the way God wants them to be. And then he places man here and says, this for you. Be fruitful, multiply. Every resource is yours. If anybody, hear me, if anybody ought to be environmentally conscious, it ought to be you. Because that's what you were put in charge of. He never said don't use it. But I have a feeling he gave us this thing up here to be a little bit more than a hat rack. We can look at it. We can understand it. And in understanding it, we discover more and more and more about him. And the more we go, the earth really is such a special place. It is certainly not a pale blue dot in the middle of the universe. Sorry, Dr. Sagan. Oh, I'm sad to think of what he found out when he drew his last breath. That saddens me. It really does. This first world that we get the privilege of being in is the world of this natural world that God has given us, which is kind of cool, but it's just the beginning of what he does in this particular verse, these particular words from himself, from God. And then we hit the first question that the leader would say, who may ascend unto the hill of the Lord, and who may stand in his holy place? Question. To which the antiphonal choir would then answer, he who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to falsehood, and has not sworn deceitfully, he shall receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God of his salvation. This is the generation who seek him, who seek your face, even Jacob. Salah. Now, if you're reading New American Standard Update, you'll notice that the even is kind of italicized. It means that because of how the phrasing is and the translation from Hebrew into English, that word is understood to be there. It's not actually there in the text, but when you read it, it's like, this is here. This would be where this would go, which is why they stick it in italics, just so you know that it was inserted, because it's the feel of those words leads that word to be there, okay? Just so you understand where that's at. Okay, so the question then, who may ascend under the hill of the Lord? Well, of course, Jerusalem was up on a hill, actually 7. And so you have to climb up out of the valley to get to it. And so there were certain hymns that were spoken while you're on your way up. They're called the Psalms of Ascent. And it's very interesting because when you get into Psalms 114 through 118, these are all Psalms of Ascent. And they're the ones that would be spoken as people would go up the sides of the mountain, heading to Jerusalem to worship. They would have been spoken on the way up to Jerusalem during the Passover. And so some of the words that are in these Psalms are words like, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So they didn't make this up. These were God's words that he gave. And at that precise moment, these words came out as they honored Christ as he came riding into the city. I think that's kind of cool. Who may ascend? Who may come? What would it take for you to come into the presence of God? Because here it tells you, you're going to see him face to face. What's it going to take to do that? This is like not like trying to get an audience with the Wizard of Oz. If you've ever watched the Wizard of Oz, you couldn't get an audience with him. Here you get an audience. But the fascinating thing is that it says, it tells us exactly what we have to have. He who has clean hands, my actions, my activities are not tainted in sin. Washing these with dial soap is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about setting the work of my hands, the work of my body, to the work that God has called me to. The righteousness of God is being called to me. And it says that I am supposed to approach him with a pure heart. And if you go back and look at the Beatitudes, what does it say about a person who has a pure heart? For they shall see God. So this is where I am. So let's just ask the question. Who can climb this hill and come on into God's presence right now the way they are by themselves? Good, no hands are up, because nobody can. So as soon as you read this, you are hearing from God that it's going to take a really, really special person to do this. We know who that person was. that no sin was found in him. He was tempted in all things and yet was without sin. That he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Jesus the Christ, the Son of the living God. He is the one who has done this. He never lifted up his soul to falsehood and never spoke deceitfully. When they accused him, he just fell quiet. When they are doing all manner of things to him, he says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. When his disciples, who walked with him for 3 years, could not figure out who he was, but he didn't walk away. He didn't leave them alone. He stayed with them. And when one even denied him 3 times, he restored him. That's a tough one right there when somebody denies you in some way. Hard to bring them back. But are we to? Yes. This one receives a blessing from the Lord and the righteousness from God of his salvation. This world right here, the first world was the world of the natural world. This is the world of your salvation. Because one has approached with clean hands and a pure heart. One has not spoken evilly, and one has called you. And if you call upon the name of the Lord, you will be saved. If you are this person, then this which God is calling us to is ours. It is ours as believers in Christ. I hear it. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. It is ours. And we shall receive, read it. It says, we shall receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from God of his salvation. This is the generation who seeks him. For he said, if you seek me, you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart. Ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened you. Then it says, who seek your face, even Jacob. Well, if you recall Jacob's dream, he's out laying down, asleep. Next thing you know, he sees the window of heaven open up. Here comes the staircase, and angels are coming up and down. And he wrestles with this one till morning. I'm not going to turn you loose until you bless me. For his blessing, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. I look at it as one of those visual aids. I think God gives us visual aids a lot, like the rainbow in the sky. Not a lifestyle, it's a promise. The marks on his hands and feet. They're a visual aid to remind us that God has done what he said he will do. He will not leave us out. Jacob received the blessing, which communicated all the way through the lines to Christ. He was not, one of my Old Testament theologians, my professors, called Jacob the flim-flam man of the Old Testament. He was always trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. It didn't matter who it was. Sometimes it didn't work out very well for him at all, but he was always about trying to figure out how he could get one up on somebody. And you're going, God could never use a guy like that. Yes, he could. So then I'm looking at going, well, hey, I'm not trying to compare myself to Jacob, but if you'd be willing to use somebody like that, I'm not off the table. I have an opportunity to be part of what God's big story is all about. And you do too. Because it's not about us, it's about him and about what he's doing through us. This part is our salvation and the life we live as a redeemed individual in Jesus Christ. And see what it ends with, Salah. Well, we need to think about that. We need to think about that hard. Then we come to the last part, 7 through 10. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Now that one gets said by everybody. Then here comes one of those questions. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Now you go, why did this get said twice? Well, remember that the Psalms are one of what we call the poetry books in the Bible. And so there's a lot of imagery in them. And we know from looking at them that many of them were set to music, although I would be really curious to hear what the music would have sounded like. I think it would have been fun to play. I would have tried it at least a little bit. I think it would be really cool to experience how these ancients worshiped God, what kind of music that they used. Very neat. But there was a rhythm. If you've studied reading, we read and it's like, oh, boring. But then when you got to set it to a rhythm, to a cadence, to rhyming words, all of a sudden it begins to take on this whole thing. And hey, unless you're looking at some of the music that seems to be coming out of wherever they're recording it now, there's actually lines where there's some balance to it. It takes me someplace. And there are these rhyming words that gets catchy because I hear it. I can hear that rhythm. I can break it apart into this verse. And then I start to plug the pieces together. And if you're a person who gets into words, which I'm not really all that much, music's more interesting to me, but if you're into the speech part of it, you listen for that. You listen for that rhythm. That's what poetry's about. That's what music is about. It is about finding a rhythm in whatever it is that's going on. And our brains are designed to do that. We look for that rhythm. Duplicating something like this was one of the things that the Psalms have. Sometimes there are contrasts where one verse says this, the next verse says exactly the opposite. So it really hammers the point. It's this, not this. Don't mess up. Good. There's a reason why this is here twice. This psalm, it is believed, was written by David when the ark was returned to Jerusalem. Now, if you recall, the ark has to be carried. The Levitical priests carry it, and nobody better touch it because bad stuff happens if you do. They were tasked with this job. They were ceremonially clean when they took this up, or they'd better not take it up. So when they come in, this is on their shoulders, and it's got to clear the lintel, the top of the building. And most of us have seen some kind of a castle movie where people are coming through over the drawbridge and in, and there's this great big stone lintel, and usually there's a gate that comes rolling down and locks everybody in the city and whatever. But in Jerusalem, the doors that they would come to, this opening didn't have a lintel, it just opened up. And so when you would open the doors up, you could come in. So as you're coming up the hill to enter Jerusalem, lift up your eyes to this place where God resides, because this is the footstool of God. It will be placed in the holiest of places. Bring this up, lift up, come up. Martin Luther actually describes it like that, as stepping up, opening the doors, throwing open the portals, if you will, to let this in. Well, as this is being spoken on that faithful day, Jesus is coming in. Does everybody recognize him? No. Some acknowledge him, but are they worshiping in the temple waiting for him to show up? No. He's made one entrance into the city. He'll make another entrance in Revelation. This second time, the portal will be thrown wide open, and all will worship him, and all will praise him. Lift up your heads, O gates. Where did people, if you wanted to sit down and have a discussion about some ordinance for a city, I can ask Donna, she could tell me about all of this kind of stuff, and she's turns in those areas. I'd go to City Hall, right? I would go someplace where there are people in governmental position to plead my case. This needs to be changed, or what can we do about this, or whatever. Well, in the ancient cities, that was done at the gate, at the front gate. And a young man could not go there till he was 30 years old. He was not considered to be an adult. He was a young man, but he couldn't sit with the elders at the city gate to discuss the business of the city until he was old enough. That would be where rules for the city were passed, where ordinances were passed. So when it talks about this particular part of this, it is mentioning this fact that lift up your eyes, O gates, and be lifted up, ancient doors. These gentlemen who would come and sit and make known the decrees of the city. They're being spoken of in here. That the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? Is the question. He is the King who is strong and mighty in battle. And he's described again down at the bottom as being the Lord of hosts, the King of glory. Well, it's interesting because you'll notice that this particular passage, the King of glory, gets repeated multiple times. So we're now talking about a single individual. We're not talking about multiple people. In his glorious return, all will know who he is. And that he is the Lord of hosts. Well, a host is an army. Have there been armies before? Yes. There were the Hebrew armies. There was the army of humanity, if you look at all of us together. They're the armies of the angels. He is the Lord of all of these things. And interestingly enough, in the Old Testament, Lord of hosts is utilized describing God 300 times. So we have the continuity of who this is. Who is this king? Who is the one that can establish for once and for all of what God has promised us? Not only are you a member of the world of the natural world, but you're also a member of the world of the supernatural world found in your salvation. And one day, as we just got through talking about over the past couple of weeks, you will be part of the eternal habitation of the new heaven and the new earth, which is yet to happen. We're just waiting. We're in the not yet. So when you pose the question on this Christ the King Sunday, who is this King of glory? What rules and reigns in your heart? What thing is there that might be substituting for God? Is it a spouse? Is it your children? Is it a job? Is it your looks? Is it your social status? Is there something about you that's taking this position which only Jesus Christ can have? You know. And guess who else does? So the question then comes to us. Not just through an antiphonal choir to the masses, who is this King of glory? And they all answer. It's not a rote memory response. We're back to the most critical question I think you will find in the Scriptures. When Jesus looks at his disciples and says, "But who do you say I am?" Peter gives us the answer. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. I pray that is our answer now. Who is this King of glory who pursues me with his love? Father, through human eyes, we don't appear to be much. We're insignificant. If we take the water from our body, there might be 10 or 20 pounds of dust on the floor. We're just the substances of this place. What you made when you crafted the first man from dirt. And yet it says you breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living being. You making man in your image and placing inside of him the breath of life made him and all who followed him special. May we see the uniqueness of the things you have made around us in this created world, but may we also remember that you have made us to be with you forever. And even though we have fallen in sin, you have made a way for us through the one who has the purest of hearts and the cleanest of hands, and has established his kingdom, which has included us through the salvation of his death, burial, and resurrection on the cross. From the cross to the grave, to the grave, to the sky. Lord, may we lift your name in praise always, for he's coming again to receive us to himself for all eternity. Help us, Lord, to get ready to set aside anything that is slowing us down and run this race in such a way as to win the prize. For on that day, you will bestow upon us crowns, we will hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the rest which I have prepared for you from the foundation of the world. We praise you and we thank you for what you have done, are doing, and will do. And we ask this in Jesus' name.